Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Francisca French. I'm with the City of Rockford in the Economic Development Department. I am the Economic Development Diversity and Procurement Coordinator here with the city. And today we are having this grant and loan preparation webinar just to give people a insight on the people who actually administer these loans and these grants, the things that we are looking for to make things easier for you as the applicant to, first of all, get all of the information that you need so that it is ready for the reviewers and things like that, as well as to give you a better opportunity at getting all of the correct information in so that your application is chosen. We have our panelists here who will be joining us. We have Caitlin Justice from DCEO. We have Michael Gasparini from the Rockford Local Development Corporation, or RLDC. And we will have Edward Caceres. He is with Rockford University as well as Business Advanced Solutions. And he will be joining us shortly. So since we have a lot that we're going to talk about today, let's go ahead and get started. So I introduce everyone, and for the agenda for today's webinar, we will talk about a few things. We will talk about what's needed to apply for business loans, things like your taxes, personal information, banking account information, things like that. All of those things will come from Michael with RLDC. Then Caitlin will discuss the state of Illinois DCEO grant process, how to best prepare for those grants, and also what items you will need for those. And then Edward will talk about tips on how to write an effective narrative that will make your application stand out. So I will go ahead. One other thing. So with the City of Rockford business loans, so with us, we have several different types of loans. A lot of times we will have them through our structured programs. So those are programs that will have specific items that we will need to have. So you will have to qualify for those things. So you may have to be in a specific area. You may have to be in a certain income bracket. You may have to add additional employees. It just kind of depends on where we are with that program and what the program is, what the requirements are, things like that. When applying for those, be sure that you are within whatever the guidelines are of that program so that it will give you a better chance. Because if you are not within that area or whatever it is for the objective for that loan, then it may be an automatic disqualification or there could be additional steps that are needed. So we do our structured programs. We also partner with other organizations. Typically, when we partner with other organizations, those are administered by that other organization, but we will help the applicants to get additional information that they need. We will help them with things like letters of support, as well as other city requirements that are needed for those applications. For the city is also involved in various loan processes. We work closely with the RLDC to Michael's organization to help people to get loans in that aspect. And with the City of Rockford, with our loan opportunities that are available for businesses, we post them with everyone that we have. We post them on the City of Rockford social media pages, the City of Rockford's website, as well as there is a monthly City of Rockford Economic Development newsletter. If you are not currently on that newsletter, please let me know, or you can go to the City of Rockford's website, and there is a link where you can just directly apply, or not apply, but you can directly register to receive that newsletter. So you can do it there. With our loans, to prepare for those, you should first be sure that your business, also you, have no open fines or liens, because that could be an automatic disqualification, or you would possibly need additional time to get those taken care of. But we cannot give you any loans if you have outstanding fines or liens. Be sure that you are current on your property taxes if you are the business owner and you own the physical location where the business is located. Also, if you are a tenant, you will need to be sure that the property taxes are up to date with that. Also, you will need a proof of ownership or a lease if you are a tenant, or if you own the property, we need to see that you actually own that property. Also, that your business is, you have an active business registration with the county or the state, wherever it could possibly be that your business is not actually registered in the state of Illinois, but whatever state you're registered in, that your business registration is active. For that process, we also have an application process. Typically, our application goes through the Neighborly application portal, which you will have to do online. You will need all of your documentation and required paperwork. You then, after that is completed, you will go through an agreement signing and then complete the project guidelines. Actually, before we get to the contact information, let's actually stop sharing my screen. And then I will allow Michael to share his slides. Just give me 1 second. And we will I'll turn it over to Michael, and he will present his piece.
Thank you, Thank you, Francisca. I'm going to get my slide deck up. And then 1 moment, please. All right. Thanks, Francisca, and thanks for everyone for joining today. My name is Michael Gasparini from the Rockford Local Development Corporation, and we're going to go over applying for a small business loan today. We'll just kind of give an overview of the agenda. Going to talk about RLDC myself and kind of what we do and how we fit into this process. I'm going to go over general loan application processes and what you're going to need. I'll go through the approval process, and then the last 2 boxes there, I'm going to get a little granular and talk about RLDC and the specific programs that we engage in and kind of some different eligibility and requirements for those. So that being said, who is RLDC? So private non-for-profit economic development agency since 1979. We're located right in downtown Rockford. In the picture there, we're in the bottom left. So we're right on the corner of State and Wyman. So right downtown. We're big supporters of downtown and the small businesses down here. Our primary activity is through small business lending. And we have a few ways that we engage in that. First and foremost is the Small Business Administration's 504 program. We are certified by SBA to give government loans on their behalf, giving us the title of a certified development company. And there's about 150 CDCs, we call them, throughout the country, and we're one of them in Rockford. We also engage in micro lending, so that's going to be loan requests 20 to 100,000 or so, and we use that through revolving loan funds, which I'll touch on later. And we also have a housing program for the city of Rockford and Winnebago County. And we like to see ourselves as a partner when we team up with you. We're not a bank, right? We're a nonprofit. Our real core goal is economic development, creating jobs in the community, getting small business owners what they need. So we partner with you, whether you're a small business. We also partner a lot with bankers in that 504 program. It's required we go with a banker, so it'll be us, a banker, and you guys. And then we also work with independent contractors, especially in that housing program. But we always try to keep ourselves as a partner or resource to you, someone you can lean on, versus a bank where it might be more transactional relationships. And just to kind of sum up these programming services, so we can lend in the SBA program the whole state of Illinois, and that's a big revenue driver for us. We are self-funded and privately held, so we do have to keep things like that in mind. So 504 drives us into our direct lender programs, where we manage the city of Rockford's revolving loan fund, the Winnebago County, and we have 2 privately held ones, which allows us to go to Boone, McHenry counties. And we're also big participants in state of Illinois' Advantage Illinois program through DCO, and then the Economic Development Agency. So we mix federal, state, and local funds, get monies out to small businesses, kind of take the lending aspect and expertise to us. And so you're going to apply for a loan. And I'm going to start off if you're a startup business, right? There's going to be 2 different scenarios if you're a startup or established. So pre-application, you got an idea, your business idea, maybe you've been working somewhere and you want to go out on your own. You're going to need to translate that into a business plan. You can get fancy with your MBA degree and do SWOTs and all that, but there's really a few key things we're looking for in a business plan. What product and services you're offering at the pricing, your marketing, your experience of yourself and your management team, and then your competition. Those are going to be the big things that we want you to think about as you start this process. And that's really going to help you formulate, this is a good idea, right? Is this going to be feasible? Are there a lot of people already doing this? That's the first step you should do before you even come out to a bank. Next thing is you're current on your taxes. A lot of the state and federal programs, you need to be current on your taxes. You can be in a payment plan. That's fine. So if you owe taxes, but you're in an agreed upon payment plan, that's totally fine. Your credit score. People, we don't like to define them through their credit score, but it's a big indicator of your ability to repay a loan. And it differs from financial institutions, but generally banks, you're going to see that 600 to 620 as their cutoff. And generally, when you get to that range, there's things like collections or bankruptcies. And there's ability to have a conversation, but ultimately, you're going to want to get your credit score to at least above 600, at least not above 620, to make sure you don't get automatically declined. Legal processes, register your LLC, get a federal employment identification number, the EIN. That's something you do through the IRS. Register with the state of Illinois. Those are all legal processes that if you get taken care of on the front end, it's going to speed things up. Then ultimately understand your needs. Are you, going to be working out of your home and just need some working capital? You have a construction business. You need equipment. Are you renting a place? You own a salon and you need leasehold improvements? Start sketching it out. Start getting a dollar idea amount in your mind. And so then that brings you to application as a startup. So you're going to need 3 years of tax returns of your personal side, personal financial statement, which is like a personal balance sheet. You list your assets, your liabilities. It gives you a net worth. Lease agreement and contracts. One important thing on a lease agreement, if you go to apply for working capital loan, let's say in RLDC, typically those are 5 years. If your lease agreement is only 1 year, we cannot extend your loan payment beyond 1 year. So we tell borrowers, get something that gives you a little security. It might be an option to renew for 4 years. It might be a 5-year lease, right? So get something at least that can extend you the length of the loan. Otherwise, banks, RLDC, we're not going to be able to give you the term you want. Again, that business plan is finalized. You got cash flow projections. As a startup, you're going to need to create 2 years of cash flow projections where essentially you're going to say, these are my revenues, these are my expenses, this is my net cash flow for year 1 and year 2. Because we have no financial history to go off of. That's going to be a big aspect of your application. Cost documents. So if you have equipment, give us the quotes, right? If you have inventory, pretty standard. And then those legal documents I mentioned in that pre-application, give us those forms, show us that you're registered, you have your EIN. We're going to need all that information to eventually close your loan. And so that's kind of the overall startup, just beginning process. So you got your application in. And we're going to talk about the actual application process. Before that, I want to talk just real quick on an established business and what's the difference. And an established business is someone that's been 2 years in business. That's going to be pretty standard across all industries. Make sure you're in good standing with the state and IRS taxes and understand your needs. But in this sense, understand if you're buying real estate, there's some great federal programs. If you need a line of credit, you're going to want to go likely private. So understand your needs and kind of what you're looking for as a business. And so application for an established business, it's going to be pretty similar, but we're going to really want those business financials. So 3 years of tax returns for each owner, and then the business and any affiliates you own. Again, a personal financial statement for each owner, interim financial statements. So that's going to be your profit and loss and balance sheet as close into the year as you can get. So we're in 2025. There's 10 months of financial data that we don't have access to based off tax returns. A lender is going to ask for that from you. So have your account, have them make these statements quarterly, and you generally should be pretty good. Then you're going to want to create a debt schedule for the business, and that's just the business side. So credit cards, any other loans, lines of credit, don't include personal debt because that's what we get in the personal financial statement. But again, that's going to help us understand your overall cash flow. And then, of course, cost documents, lease agreement, purchase contract, equipment quotes. You come to us with all these items, it's going to really help expedite the process. And you may need more, but this is pretty generally standard what you're going to need if you're applying for a business loan. And so now that you actually applied, what are your chances of approval, right? What goes into lenders and what's in the background that you may not be aware of. And we actually have risk rating sheets that we do for loans. Banks do it too, and it's after you do everything, you put it into the sheet and it pumps out a score of your credit worthiness. Everyone differs, but generally the most important thing, cash flow of the business. And so this is going to be your earnings before depreciation, amortization, and interest. So all those get added back. So you might have a negative net income, but you'll have positive cash flow. And what we're looking for is how much cash do you generate enough cash flow to service the debt? That's essentially what it is. Is your business going to be able to pay its debt? We look for a 1.15 times coverage ratio. And so what that looks like, if your debt service is 100,000 per year, you're going to want to generate 115,000 in positive cash flow. That's the baseline. Anything below that, then you're likely going to get declined. You're going to have to start shopping around a bit. Next is collateral coverage ratio. If you're buying real estate, they'll take a mortgage. If you're getting working capital, there's a good chance they might ask for personal property. You pledge a home, you pledge some personal property. So that's the secondary source of repayment. It's the collateral. If the loan defaults, they're going to collect. So having some kind of collateral coverage ratio is very important to many lenders. Not as much as RLDC, but banks, they're very concerned about that. And that's going to be a big aspect of your loan application process. Your debt to worth, it's just the relative amount of debt you have to your net worth. So if you have a high amount of debt, naturally you're going to have a high debt to worth ratio. And it's not a disqualifier, but it's now things are tight for you, right? Tying things up versus if you have a low debt to worth, you're going to be a little more dynamic and be able to get access to capital, get lent money. It's always harder to get it when you're in a bad situation. You already have a lot of debt, right? And you really need help, but you can't get it. So it's kind of a paradox in a way, but so generally get as much as you can ask for upfront when you're going through a loan process. It's a lot harder to get it later when you have a high debt to worth. Equity investment, generally banks are looking for 20, 25%. RLDC, we're a little dynamic in that a lot of our borrowers only have 10% equity requirements. So that's something to consider. And then the personal credit I touched on is going to be very important as well, but definitely on the lower list of things, because all those things starting at the top kind of feed into each other. Just how are you going to pay back this loan? What's your ability? And is that a high risk? And that's a leverage of what your interest rate might be. Lower risk loans, get a lower interest rate. Higher risk loans, get a higher interest rate. And that's something you might see with an unsecured loan. You're going to have a higher interest rate versus if you pledge collateral, you might get a better interest rate. Timeline for loans, it's project dependent entirely. Generally though, it's about 30 days. If there's real estate involved, it can be as much up to 60 days, but it just takes time. Make sure you're doing your due diligence in the background. A good lender will keep you on top of that. So if you're purchasing real estate, you're going to need an environmental most of the time. And that's something you order. You're going to need surveys if you're doing a 504 loan, get them your bank information. And then always just be responsive. I reach out to my borrowers all the time where this specific document I need because it's for this loan. Also, don't be afraid to reach out. I like being asked questions. I like when people email me, call me, shows you care, right? And so that's never a bad thing. So just to go over some general tips and good practices, do your research. Understand your private and your federal, your local and state. A lot of people come to us and they don't know much about SBA 504. We're your experts, so come and talk to us. I'm not telling you to become an expert on these, but get an idea and see what's out there for you. There might be something that is especially advantageous for a veteran versus a woman-owned business, right? And then understand your interest rates and repayments. There's loan calculators online, very easy. You can plug in your number, plug in your interest rate, understand if you have the appetite for that. $50,000 loan over 5 years at 8%. It's going to be a payment pretty high. So be prepared for that. Shop around too. You're the customer. So terms and requirements differ across institutions. There might be minimum deposit requirements, different interest rates. It's kind of hard to shop around because once you get in the application process, you're kind of set in. But the big thing that I think can differentiate on the front end is that relationship, that vibe you get with the lender you speak with. Do you feel like that person is going to be someone you're going to want to work with long term? Generally, banks, once you get in, you tend to stay with the same institution. It's a relationship, right? So if that kind of vibe feels off at the start, shop around a bit, go talk to someone else. And that's something you can lean into RLDC. We have a lot of banker contacts that we can help you get in touch with. And then always just ask questions. There's no question. A lot of people, they probably know their business very well, but don't know financials. So ask for the prepayment penalties. What's the term and repayment schedule? Is it monthly? Collateral requirements, right? So just keep in mind and don't be afraid to ask a question. Even it may seem simple, I'm always happy when people ask those questions. So I really just want you to understand what you're getting into. And then buyer beware. If it sounds too good to be true, it likely is. And that's just the idea of, I'll get you, you go online, it's a 1 week loan. Next thing you know, you have a 20% loan that drowns you. And we see that quite a bit with borrowers. They get into these kind of usurious loans and they get trapped. So be careful, just don't take the easiest money. And so got about a minute left or so. So I'm just going to quickly touch on kind of some of RLDC's program. So the SBA 504 loan program. It's the U.S. Small Business Administration. We call it the Small Business Window to Wall Street. So SBA literally goes on your behalf to Wall Street and issues bonds. So you effectively trade on Wall Street with the credit rating of a U.S. agency. So you get very long-term below market fixed rates. For real estate equipment only, it's 10, 20, or 25 years. And those are the eligibility requirements. There's about 100 million more. The SOP is 500 pages. So that's a conversation if that you come in and we really have in person, but you can kind of see the major ones. You're for profit, it's owner occupied, they don't do passive real estate. Those are ineligible projects. That's going to be pretty similar for DCEO. And that's on SBA websites. It's pretty general stuff. Gambling, I will touch on. You can have slots machines. It has to be with less than 1/3 of your revenue, though. Just to quickly touch RLF characteristics, this is what I touched on. The city, we manage the city, Winnebago, and that's our smaller loans. We will subordinate to bankers, and so that's where that banking partnership comes in. Our rates are project dependent, but on these, we always utilize Advantage Illinois. Most of our borrowers qualify as SETI. Our interest rates are high through our private revolving loan funds because we borrow from banks to lend to you. Banks usually don't mess around with these $20,000 to $100,000 loans. It's not big enough for them. So that's where we come in. So our rates can be high on their own at 12%, but utilizing Advantage Illinois in this program, we can get our rates down to 7% or so for our borrowers. Nominal processing fees, and of course, we're one of the most active lenders in the Advantage Illinois program. Every single loan we do is with them. And just to quickly touch on our housing program, so up to 100% financing for distressed properties. You rehab it, it's a 1-year loan. You can sell it, you can turn it into investment property. It's been very successful for us. We started about 5 years ago and done about 265 houses in Rockford. So that can be either Rockford or Winnebago County. We have 2 funds for that. So with that being said, thank you for letting me present today and kind of giving you an overview. There's a lot to talk about that goes into a loan application, but generally getting your due diligence done up front, doing your research, getting your financials prepared, really going to help. And that will allow bank then to go through credit analysis and get you an answer pretty quickly. We can tell you pretty quickly up front if we have your financials, if this is going to make sense just based on cash flow. If you have any questions, you want to have a conversation, there's a bunch of other things I could cover. So please, that's our number, my associates' emails. We have a great team here and we're happy to work with you. And with that, I am done.
Thank you, Michael. That was a lot of great information. I'm sure people are going to be calling you and emailing you pretty soon.
Hey, please do. I'm always happy to have a conversation, but thank you, Francisco.
Thank you. And next we have Caitlin Justice from the state of Illinois DCEO. Caitlin, if you would come on, please, and if you would like to share your slides.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second. I'll get that keyed up. Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Caitlin Justice, and I am with the Office of Accountability at the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. So my portion of today's presentation will be focusing on preparing your entity for a grant with DCEO. So in the next slides, I'm going to cover the DCEO grant process and where to find grant opportunities, how to prepare your entity for applying to grants, and I'm going to finish up by sharing a few tips and resources to help you in your grant journey. Just to let you know, we do have some resource links that are mentioned in my slides, and my coworker Jason Anderson is going to put those into the chat. So feel free to copy those down if you'd like. I'll also have some time at the end of my presentation if there are any questions as well. So it's important to understand the entire grant process before applying for a grant with DCEO. So I'm going to take you through this flow chart that shows the steps an application goes through from submission to closeout. So when a DCEO program office is ready to accept applications for submission for a grant opportunity, a notice of funding opportunity, or a NOFO, is posted publicly to the Catalog of State Financial Assistance, as well as our DCEO Apply for Funding webpage. So the Catalog of State Financial Assistance is a statewide comprehensive source document of all state financial assistance program information. So that lists all state agencies. And then the DCEO Apply for Funding page strictly lists agency-specific NOFOs. So those are NOFOs specifically from DCEO. Okay, so to apply for state grants, all applicants must be in pre-qualified status by the application deadline. So the state of Illinois has defined a set of requirements for all organizations seeking to receive grant funding. And those entities who wish to do business with the state of Illinois must meet these requirements to be deemed qualified and in good standing to apply for grant opportunities. And I'm going to go into more detail on pre-qualification requirements in the later slides. So once that NOFO is posted and entities are working towards achieving pre-qualification requirements, it's essential to thoroughly review the NOFO and the attached application documents. Included in those application documents is the NOFO supplement, which that is a multi-page document that outlines the opportunity in full detail. We also have a full training dedicated to NOFOs, and we'll have that linked in the chat for you. So after reviewing the NOFO in full detail, if the decision has made to move forward to apply for the opportunity, the applicant will need to complete all the required application documents listed in the NOFO supplement and submit the application by the deadline listed in the NOFO. The method for applying is also listed in the NOFO supplement, so it's imperative that you understand the directions for submission. Most of the programs here at DCEO have what we use, it's called Smartsheet, and you upload your documents to a specific link. We do have some program offices, though, that do utilize mail-in applications. So all of that is specified in the NOFO. So it's just to be clear that you're reading and understanding how you are to submit those applications. So after the application deadline has closed, applications are reviewed by a team of merit reviewers. The criterion for scoring is listed in the NOFO supplement, and reviewers assess each application for a score determination. The timeline varies for the merit review. The more applicants to the NOFO, the more time it takes to complete those merit reviews. So there isn't a specific timeline that's set. It's just whenever all the applications have been thoroughly reviewed by the merit review team. So once that merit review is completed, the selected applicants will then be notified of the grant award through the GATA grantee portal. However, if an entity was not selected for the opportunity, a denial letter will be sent via email. And then once the awardees have accepted the notice of state award through the GATA grantee portal, the grant manager will work with that entity to establish the grant agreement and outline the requirements that the grantee is expected to uphold during the grant term. Once that grant agreement has been executed, the grantee can begin expending grant funds for the program's intent. Grantees are to submit periodic performance and financial reports along with supporting documentation of expenditures back to their grant manager. During this time, grantees are also responsible for complying with any audit requirements as stated in their grant agreement. The type of audit is determined by the amount of grant funds expended during the specific audit period. We also have an audit FAQ, and that'll be posted in the chat as well. And the last step, after all grant funds are expended and the grant performance has been completed, the grant will enter closeout and final reports will be submitted to your grant manager to officially close out the grant. So that was an overview of the process. Now I'm going to take a little bit more time to go into each step of the grant topic and explain in a little bit more detail for you all. So we're going to cover the notice of funding opportunity, which we also call the NOFO. Which is the NOFO is the formal announcement of that grant opportunity, and it includes all the information about the program, requirements, and expectations. So, and just a note, every state agency that posts NOFOs has to use the same uniform template. So if you're applying for grants outside of DCEO, just note that our NOFO will follow the same framework. So section A will always be program description, B will always be funding information, and so on. So I've outlined on this slide where you can see all of the sections that make up a complete NOFO. And then this slide shows a current NOFO that is posted to the DCEO Apply for Funding page. Once you open the NOFO, the executive summary of the NOFO is displayed, which is a high-level overview of the grant opportunity. So that will be the screenshot on the left side of the slide for you. The application documents will be posted, which can include but not limited to the NOFO supplement, a program application, uniform budget template, mandatory disclosures, conflict of interest, and any additional program documents or resources. So you can see on the image on the right, these are the application documents that will need to be submitted for this NOFO. So you can see they have several listed there, and this particular NOFO also has listed an additional resource, which is their FAQ. So some of our programs will take all of the questions that they've received either via email or from a technical assistance session and compile those into one source document. So if you do have questions, it's a great resource to go back and look through. Maybe somebody else has already asked the question that you have, but a great document to look at while you're completing your application documents. So when it comes to questions that the DCEO Grant Help Desk receives regarding NOFOs, the most frequent questions we get are, is my entity eligible to apply? How do I know what my application is scored on? And how do I submit the application documents? So the easy answer to all of those questions, most all of those answers can be found in that NOFO supplement. So that's always going to be the first document that is attached to a NOFO. It's usually a multi-page document that goes into great detail. So when it comes to determining if you can apply, the requirements are spelled out in section C, which is the eligibility requirements. And it will give you specifics on what type of entities qualify for the program. It's also important to note that each NOFO is unique, so it's imperative to read through the NOFO in its entirety. We don't want you to go through and apply and you submit your application and you're a non-for-profit and this NOFO was only for for-profits. So it's beneficial to read through it, understand it, so that way you're not spending time on something that maybe you're not qualified for. So please read through the details and understand them and make sure that your entity is capable of proceeding with the program. And we'll get questions in if the applicant is asking what information to include in their application package. It is a competitive process, so we can't tell you what to write in your application. We can tell you where to find information of what to include in that. So in our section E, which is called application review information, that includes a detailed table that describes the scoring criteria based on the need, capacity, and quality. Total scores for each category are also included, so applicants can see the points awarded to each section. So if you see a section that has a higher number of points, you obviously want to write your application and focus on that section and include as much information as you can. So when you're looking through that NOFO supplement, that criterion is listed, and just to make sure you hit on each one of those topics that's listed, so that way you can achieve the most points as possible. So once that applicant has completed the application package with all the required documents, the method to submit the package is carefully noted in section D, which is the application submission information. And like I said before, a majority of DCEO's NOFOs, the application method is through a specific link, which we utilize Smartsheet, where documents are uploaded. And then that link is also embedded into the NOFO supplement. So I do want to point out that our application packages, when you go to submit, they are time-stamped upon submission. So please make sure you allow yourself plenty of time to get the submission entered. We work on hard deadlines. So the deadline listed in the NOFO is a hard deadline. So if it's stated as 5 p.m. Central Standard Time and your submission comes through at 5:01 Central Standard Time, it will be disqualified from the review. So please allow yourself enough time to get your documents uploaded and submitted. There's also an option that you can click on submission that you can send yourself a copy of your responses. I highly recommend clicking that option so that way you have an emailed receipt to you knowing that your application was submitted and you have the copy and proof of that. So 2 resources that I want to share with you as you search for notice of funding opportunities. I've mentioned the Catalog of State Financial Assistance and the DCEO's Apply for Funding page. So if you're just getting started in your grants journey, or maybe you're just looking for some additional funding sources, we get a lot of questions in the help desk of like, where do we go? Well, we don't even know how to start type of thing. So the public and any applicant can search the Catalog of State Financial Assistance for grant opportunities from all state agencies, as well as the option to be added to a weekly mailing list of new grant opportunities. So what this does is you send a blank email message to the email listed on the screen, and you're added to the listserv. And then every Friday, you get a compiled listing of all of the new grant opportunities that were posted that week from all state agencies directly to your inbox. So it saves a lot of time, especially if you've never been in the CSFA before. There's a variety of ways to search for grant opportunities. You can search by keyword. You can search for any grant that's open right now for funding. You can search via, if you're looking for a grant from a specific agency, all different types of ways. And it's constantly updated. So if you are the type of person that just wants to go through every single grant opportunity that's posted and read through it, and then you come back the next day and you see like So on the first day there was 63, and then you come back the following day and now there's 83 listed. Well, you kind of have to start all over and go through to see what's new and what's not. So if you're signing up for the weekly mailing list, all those new ones are automatically sent to your email, and it's just one single email. They do not spam you by any means. And it's just a condensed version, so you can go through and it's a little bit easier to search that way. So highly recommend signing up for that listserv. And then, so that's for all state agencies. And then for our DCEO apply for funding, this is strictly DCEO NOFOs. So on our website, we have a grantee resource site. It's very easy to navigate. There is a clickable button that says apply for funding, and that will open up all of DCEO's current funding opportunities. So we've got those links for you on the slides and in the chat as well. And going back, I mentioned pre-qualification earlier in the presentation. So when you are ready to apply for state grants, your entity must be in pre-qualified status, and you must maintain that status throughout the duration of the grant term. So what does it mean when we say pre-qualified? Pre-qualification demonstrates that an organization has met all legal requirements, obtained all the necessary registrations, and has a proven track record for compliance. So those pre-qualification requirements include registering with SAM.gov, which is the System for Award Management, an official website of the U.S. government. And this is where grantees must register to do business with the U.S. government. And through SAM.gov, grantees will receive a unique entity identifier, which is also known as a UEI. Registration with SAM.gov must be renewed annually, and a registration is good for 365 days. Grantees are also required to have a Federal Employment Identification Number, also known as a FEIN number. And then applicants must not be on the federal excluded parties list, which is a list that identifies entities excluded from receiving federal contracts, subcontracts, and other type of federal or non-federal financial assistance or benefits. You must also be registered with the Illinois Secretary of State and obtain a certificate of good standing. That certificate of good standing demonstrates that the entity exists and that is in full compliance with state regulations. There are some entities that are exempt from Secretary of State registration. However, the entities that must meet this requirement include corporations, non-for-profit corporations, limited partnerships, limited liability companies, and limited liability partnerships. And then next up, an applicant must not be on the Illinois Stop Payment List. This is a list that includes all entities who have been found to be non-compliant with their grant agreement or grant policies. And then the last one is not to be on the Illinois Department of Healthcare and Family Services sanction list, which is a list that contains entities that are not eligible for Medicaid reimbursement. So it's very important to note that pre-qualification status must be achieved during the application period and must be maintained during the grant period. So, and you can always check your pre-qualification status by logging into the GATA grantee portal. You'll see a similar slide like what I have on this slide. Ours is green. However, on your grantee side, it'll be a blue color, and it'll list out if there's any discrepancies with your pre-qualification. If you do find that your entity has something that is flagged, that either red or yellow, there's a help button, and you can click on that help button and it'll tell you who to contact if you do have something that is out of compliance. You can also reach out to our DCEO Grant Help Desk, and we can help you figure out what you need to do to get your entity back in pre-qualified standing. So sometimes it's as simple as just fixing, say you renewed your SAM.gov and it just hadn't synced yet, or maybe you had it marked as private instead of public, so it didn't sync with the GATA portal, all sorts of ways, but we're happy to help at the Grant Help Desk to get you back in pre-qualified status. We also have a great training video on pre-qualification that takes a deep dive into each of these requirements in more detail, and that's posted in the chat as well. And then I'm going to wrap up with some tips and resources for you when it comes to DCEO grants. So I cannot stress enough that if your entity is considering applying for grants, to have clear communication with your staff. It's important that all involved in the grant process know and understand the requirements. There's a lot of moving parts to grants where you may need to pull in your financial team. Maybe you have a program manager and then somebody that oversees the overall organization. So it's important that everybody is on the same page. You understand the requirements. There are several reports that are due. So just to make sure that everybody's on the same page of those reports are getting submitted and appropriately. We also have all of the resources available to our grantees. So we have an entire page, we call it the grantee resource site, and it's dedicated to all the education, including grant topic tutorial videos, PDF resources, and then of course our virtual help desk. Our help desk is manned Monday through Friday, regular business hours, and we handle any grant related questions. So maybe it can even be technical assistance questions. So say you're having trouble to log into the GATA grantee portal, you can reach out to us and we can help troubleshoot that. We can answer questions on NOFOs that are posted. There are some questions that we get though that are more geared towards a program or programmatic question where we do need to pull in the program staff for that, but we can connect you with those contacts and make sure your question gets resolved. And then another tip is if you are applying for a notice of funding opportunity and there's a technical assistance session offered for the NOFO, have at least one member of your team attend the session. This session will give you an opportunity to hear directly from the program contact so you can hear those specifics about the program. They do record those as well, and we post them back on the apply for funding page, but be sure to try to attend that session if you can, or to have somebody in your place so that way you have all that information available. And then another tip is to set reminders or calendar notifications for due dates. That could include your application due date, your reporting due dates, maybe your audit due dates. Doing this will just help alleviate any missed deadlines that could affect your application being considered or result in non-compliance if reporting or audit dates are missed. And then you could be temporarily added to the Illinois Stop Payment List, which we do not want. So just to make sure that you are aware of all of the dates and that you get everything submitted on time. And then I mentioned before our DCEO grantee resource site. So this is a snapshot of that site. As you can see, we have it very easily to navigate in 4 buckets. So the apply for funding, which is where our DCEO NOFOs are going to be located. If you'd like to sign up for any of DCEO's grant trainings, we offer a lot of virtual trainings. We do our pre-qualification, and then once a month we do a revolving topic training on a various grant topic, and that changes monthly. We also offer weekly office hours every Tuesday from 2 to 3, which is a very informal session. There's no formal presentation. It's just simply questions that applicants or grantees have, and they come to the help desk and ask those questions. And then you can see our video training and resource library. So we have about 23 videos on there now that we've created on various grant topics. So you can watch these short little videos. They're very easy to understand. And then if there's any resources that are mentioned in the video, we link those below the video so you have access to those as well. And then our help desk, which is our virtual help desk. And there's currently 4 of us that man that help desk, but we're happy to answer any questions that come in. We pride ourselves on getting you a response very quickly. So feel free to use us if you have any questions when it comes to the grant process. I think that's all I have for today for my portion of it. If you have any questions at all, you can send an email to the Grant Help Desk, or if anybody has any questions, I haven't seen any hands raised. But I thank you, Jason, for posting all of our resources into the chat for me. And I think that's it.
Okay, thank you, Caitlin. That was a lot of great information. And she is absolutely correct. The two things, the state is very strict about the deadline for grant applications. And also with the newsletter, the weekly newsletter, it has a lot of valuable resources in there as far as not just funding opportunities, but also other resources of virtual things that are happening, in-person things that are happening throughout the state, that if you are interested, you're absolutely welcome to attend. So thank you so much for that information. And thank you, Jason, for putting all of the items in the chat. I was watching them as they were coming up, and you were very thorough with those things. So thank you very much. Next, we have Edward Caceres, and he was actually having some technical difficulties getting on the panelist piece, so he is on the phone. I've unmuted your phone, Edward, so that you can talk to the audience. Please say something so that I can be sure that we can hear you. Edward, can you hear us? No? Okay, it looks like he is not able to come in, but what I will do is I will try to go through some of the slides that he has and go through those if at any point he is able to come in through the phone. I've unmuted him, but let's see if he's. Yeah, it looks like he's still not able to come in. So what I'll do is I'll go through the slides. If he's able to join in, Edward, at any time, just please pop in and cut me off. So let me share his slides. So the pieces that Edward is talking about is using AI and narrative strategy to elevate your grant or loan application. For AI tools for grant and loan preps, AI tools can help with drafting business plans and executive summaries, generating financial projections, as well as creating marketing strategies. You can also edit and define your application narrative through AI. So a lot of people will use AI to create various pieces of either their business plan or application pieces. But please, if you do decide to do that, go in and make some corrections, make it more personalized so that it doesn't sound like just a mechanical piece. And it will help you with answering all of the questions that the application has, as well as kind of fine tuning the things that you will need to talk about your business. Some recommended AI tools are Copilot and ChatGPT that will draft and polish your narrative, and it will also answer prompts clearly. You can use Canva to design brand one-pagers or pitch decks. You can use Copy AI or Jasper to generate persuasive content for your marketing or your mission statements. You can use Excel and AI plugins to automate financial projections and cash flow tables. Using Excel is really nice because a lot of times with the state, they will also have a budget template. And also with the city of Rockford, we are now implementing budget templates with our grant applications as well. And you will have to put information in. A lot of times we will have automatic pieces like summaries, things like that, that will kind of calculate some of those things for you, but you will have to put in the information that is necessary so that those calculations can be projected. You can also use other tools that will help you to feel cohesive and professional with your application. And then Edward has some items over on the side that includes both paid and free applications that you can use to make your presentations and your applications clearer. Also, you can use them to really get your statement across. In addition to those, he has 12 AI skills to learn in 2025. Those skills are absolutely great because as the technology continues to advance, you can stay abreast of the things that will be needed that will also make your application stand out. So writing an effective narrative is very important because you want to be able to tell the story of your business as well as your business plans and how the grant or loan or whatever you're applying for will impact the success of your business. So some things that will make your narrative stand out, you can use clarity, you can use what type of problem are you trying to solve? So those are things that you will be able to talk about. You will also talk about the impact, who benefits and how. So a lot of times with the benefit of those grants and loans, it will sometimes have an area benefit. It will sometimes have a citywide benefit. It'll sometimes have a personal benefit, and it'll have a benefit to the business community. So those things are very important to be able to convey when you're talking about your plans, because that may give you a leg up over your competition who other things are comparable. You may have a more compassionate or impactful statement that you will talk about. With their vision, you want to talk about where your business is headed. What is success for your business? What does growth look like for your business? And what are some of the other things that would ultimately show the forward projection and trajectory of your business? Finally, authenticity. Why you and why now? So with authenticity, you will add that personal touch to your business statement and also to your narrative so that you can stand out to say why you specifically, your business should be the preferred business, should be the one that's chosen to receive these funds. For your narrative structure, you will need to put it into various pieces with various paragraphs formats. So in the beginning, you would want to do your introduction, say who you are and what your business does. You will also include your need statement, why the funding is critical for your specific business. The impact statement, as we talked about in the previous slide, what will change if you receive the support? How will this impact your business, the community, businesses in large? Then also close with your closing statement, your commitment to readiness, how you are prepared to receive these funds and implement them into your business strategy. And then Edward also includes some examples at the bottom. Instead of just asking for inventory funding, he gives an example of someone of a business who told the story about empowering you through performance and technology, connecting their mission to the community impact. Some writing tips that Edward has is use an active voice and specific numbers. You can say something like, we've served 120 customers in 3 months instead of we've served customers. So be specific with those numbers and that impact that it has made. You should avoid jargon, write like you're speaking to a neighbor. Try to cut out some of the formalities, still write in a professional manner, but some of the formalities and the rigidity of speaking with your audience, make it more of a conversation. Also, end with a confident, forward-looking statement. With your support, we will expand our reach and impact. So say exactly how this will confidently say exactly how this will impact your business. And so in closing, Edward has, oops, sorry, more information about the AI tools and how to improve your application. Review your narrative for clarity and emotional impact. Please review your narrative to include, first of all, to include all of the information that the application is asking for. So to be sure that all of the questions were answered, all of the required documents, things like that are included and that you speak to those documents, as well as they are clearly understood by the reader. You can also reach out to local partners and mentors for feedback before submitting, because oftentimes they'll give you information that you may not have thought about before. Your story is your superpower, and with the right tools, you can tell it in a way to get noticed. So if you have any questions, I'm sorry that he couldn't speak today, but Edward has his information, his email, his phone number. You can reach out to him directly if you have additional questions. So I'll stop sharing that screen. Edward, I hope I did your slides some justice, but if not, feel free to provide additional information. This is a recorded webinar and it will be available to everyone at a later date as well. It'll be available on the City of Rockford's YouTube page. And also, if you need the slides, then you can reach out to each panelist to see if their slides are available for you. I know that mine are, so you can have mine. And then one final thing that I want to close out with, share my screen one last time. So here is all of our contact information together. So if you have any questions or anything like that, I know that everyone included their contact information within their specific presentations, but here's everyone's together. You can take a screenshot of that if you need to. I'll give you a couple moments to do that. And then thank you for attending. Feel free to reach out to any of us if you have any questions. And like I said, this webinar will be available at a later date. So I thank you all for attending and please have a good day. Thank you.